Hello guys, hello student. My name is Mark Daryl Oradan from BSE Math 1. And for today's video, I will be the one who will give you some tips on solving the quadratic equation. Or in short, we will talk about or we will discuss about the quadratic equation. But first of all, quadratic equation, when we say quadratic equation, there's a lot of method that we can use in order for us to extract the roots or to find the value of x from the quadratic equation. Number one is the factoring. Factoring is the simplest, fastest, and easiest way to extract the roots from the quadratic equation. But not all quadratic equations can be factorable. The second one is, yes, that's right. The second one is square root property. Square root property is great when solving for something square. But always remember that the quadratic equation, it has or it not always has squared. And the third one is can be useful. Always please take note when the quadratic equation cannot be factored or cannot be used by the factoring technique or cannot be used by the square root property, the third one is very useful. Yes, you heard it right. That's what we call completing the square. Completing the square is something like you can always do it or you can always use it in order for us to find the value of x or to extract the root of the quadratic equation. And last and in addition, completing the square can be ugly or the equation can be ugly. And last but not the least is the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula is something that you can always use it to find the value of x or to extract the roots of the quadratic equation. Okay, reminder lang sa mga terms na gagamitin natin sa topic na ito. But first of all, what is a quadratic equation? Sabi dito, a quadratic equation is a second order equation written as ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are coefficients of the real number and a is not equal to 0. Okay. Sabi dito, or ibig sabihin nito, hindi lahat ng equation ay matatawag na natin na quadratic equation. Sabi din dito, hindi lahat ng equation ay nasa standard form na ng quadratic equation. Ano nga ba yung standard form ng quadratic equation? It is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Alright? So, bakit nga ba natin pinag-aaralan to? Bakit nga ba mahalaga na pag-aralan to? Because when we are taking the civil service exam, lalo na pag nag-take tayo ng entrance exam sa mga college school na papasukan natin, syempre sa mga given problem, hindi naman tayo bibigyan agad o hindi naman tayo binibigyan ng kung anong method yung gagamitin natin in order for us to find the value of x dun sa given na quadratic equation. So, sobrang halaga nito guys. Paano nga ba natin malalaman kung ang isang equation ay quadratic equation? Dito sa first example na binigay ko, which is x squared plus 4x plus 3 is equal to 0, where a is equal to 1, b is equal to 4, and c is equal to 3. Sabi dito sa meaning, a is not equal to 0. So, since a is not equal to 0, so pwede na natin siyang matawag na quadratic equation. Dito naman sa pangalawa, 9x plus 5 is equal to 0. Is it a quadratic equation? Let's check. Sabi dito, quadratic equation is a second degree equation written as ax squared plus bx plus c. Dun pa lang sa term na ax squared, tingnan natin, meron ba siyang ax squared? Wala. So meaning, hindi na natin siya matatawag na quadratic equation. And that is one of the way para malaman natin kung ang isang equation ay quadratic equation. Alright? And this topic, please bring the following. Paper and ballpen. You really need that in order for you guys to solve the given problem. Alright? And don't forget to use the pause and play. Kinakailangan yan if ever na may mga hindi kayo maintindihan or may mga gusto kayong balikan para mas lalo nyo pong maintindihan. What you need to know. Determine the factor of a number that is not a perfect square and solve the quadratic equation by using extracting square root. So meaning, sa given problem, sa topic na ito, meron tayong two objectives. Alright? Okay guys, you have to study the example. You have to study the given example na ipinapakita ko na sinusolve natin and yung mga lumalabas sa screen. And then, try to observe it. Okay, what's new? As you can see, we have three sample of equations here. X squared minus 3x minus 5 equal to 0. As you can see, the first equation is already in a standard form. So, we can call that one as a quadratic equation. But, let's not focus on it. As you can see, the second and third equation is incomplete. So, meaning, the first equation is already in a standard form. So, let's separate that. We will be having a separate solution for it. So let's focus on second and third equation. As you can see, our second and third equation are incomplete. Do you think this equation are quadratic equation? Yes, that's right. Why? Because it's only paired with quadratic term and linear term or constant. Alright? So, since these equations are incomplete, how do we get their roots? Yes, that's right. By using square root property and quotient rule. Alright? So, let's have an example. Let's say x squared minus 64 is equal to 0. How do we get the roots of this equation? Okay, by applying the square root property. Okay, first step, we need to eliminate this by applying addition property and equality. Alright, we will, in order for that to eliminate, we need to add 64 and kung anong ginawa natin sa right side, ganoon din yung gagawin natin sa left side. Add 64. So, it will become x squared is cancel na yan is equal to 64. So, apply the square root property. So, cancel na to. Matitira na lang dyan is x is equal to square root of 64 is, since this is a perfect square, it will become positive and negative 8. So, we will be having a two roots. It will be that will be x sub 1 is equal to 8 and x sub 2 is equal to negative 8. So that's it. Alright guys, for our second example, let's say 5x squared minus 40 is equal to 0. So first is let's check. 5x squared is a quadratic term. Negative 40 is a constant. So meaning there is no problem at all. We can use the square root property. But first step that we need to do is we have to eliminate the negative 40 by applying addition property of equality. Alright? By adding positive 40 to the right and to the left plus 40. So it will become 5x squared is equal to 40. And the second step that as you can see, our variable or our x with the highest degree of 2 or our quadratic term has a numerical coefficient of 5. So we have to eliminate the 5 by applying multiplication property of equality, by multiplying it by 1 over 5. So it will become 5x squared over 5, and also we will apply both sides. We will apply the multiplication property of equality both sides. We have to multiply it by 1 over 5. So it will become 5x squared over 5 and also 40 over 5. So it's almost the same by dividing it by 5, both sides. So there, it will become x squared equal to 40 divided by 5 is equal to 8. So now we have to apply the square root property. It will become x, and it will become since 8 we can still simplify it. It will become a positive and negative 2 square root of 2. So why positive and negative 2 square root of 2? Why? Because the product of 8 is 4 times 2. So since 4 is a perfect square, so ilalabas natin siya. So it will become 2 square root of 2. Okay? Magkakaroon tayo ng, therefore, our roots here will become x sub 1 is equal to 2 over 2, and our x sub 2 is equal to negative 2 square root of 2. Alright, so that's it. That is all about. So now let's move to quotient rule. But first is, when can we use the quotient rule? So let's check. When can we use the quotient rule? Let's say we have 3x squared minus 9x is equal to 0. So first is 3x squared. We have quadratic term. And 9x is a linear term, which is meaning in this given problem by the quadratic equation, we can use a quotient rule. So meaning there is no problem at all. We can now use quotient rule. So let's have an example. Let's say we have 5x squared is equal to 125x. So the first thing we have to do is to eliminate the 5x squared here. Why? Because we are applying the quotient rule. Okay, in order to eliminate the 5x here, we have to apply the multiplication property of equality by multiplying it by 1 over 5x. So since we multiply it by 1 over 5x both side, it will become 5x squared over 5x. Same thing with the right side, it will become 125x over 5x. It almost the same with dividing it by 5x. So let's cancel the 5. So it will become a, by applying quotient rule, it will become x raised to the power of 2 minus 1. It will become x. Alright, so here we have to, since the value of x from the numerator and the value of x to the denominator is almost the same, we can now cancel it. 125 divided by 5, it will become 125. So by applying quotient rule in this given equation of the quadratic equation, we can get x is equal to 125. This is one of the best example of quotient rule. So now, let's move on to solving quadratic equation using factoring. In factoring, there's a lot of method and techniques that we can use in order for the quadratic equation to solve, including the greatest common factor. The second one is the difference of two square. The third one is trinomial in the form of x squared plus bx plus c. And the fourth one is trinomial in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So let's move on to the first one. The greatest common factor. In this example, I will show you how to use the GCF, or what we call the greatest common factor. Let's say we have x squared minus 4x. Using greatest common factor, we will be able to find the roots of this quadratic equation. Alright? By doing that, what is the greatest common factor of first term and second term? Let's start with the coefficient 1. So the greatest common factor here is also the x. So we will write it as x divided by x squared, x divided by negative 4x, it will become negative 4 equal to 0. So equate it every x into 0. X is equal to 0 and x minus 4 is equal to 0. So our x of 1 will become 0. Our x of 2, x transpose, it will become 4. So for our x of 2, we will have x is equal to 4. Okay, for another example for that is 4x squared minus 6x equal to 0. Okay, the greatest common factor here is 2x. Alright, 2x divided by 4x, it will become 2x. 2x divided by 6x, it will become negative 6x, it will become negative 3 equal to 0. Now equate every x into 0. So divide both sides by 2. Our x of 1 is equal 0 divided by 2, it will become 0. For our x of 2, transpose, it will become 2x equal to 3. Divide both sides by 2. For our x sub 2, it will become 3/2. And that is all about greatest common factor. So now let's move on to the difference of two square. Okay, in this example, I will show you how to use the difference of two square. Let's say we have x squared um, minus 9 equal to 0. So, since I already have a quadratic equation, the first thing we have to check is make sure the first term and the second term is a perfect square. So first term is a perfect square. The second term is a perfect square. So let's find the factor of it. So the factor of x squared, factor of -9, will become 3 times 3. Positive and negative. So we have to equate every x into 0. So for our x sub 1, x minus 3 equal to 0, x plus 3 equal to 0. So transpose, it will become x 3 for our x sub 1. And for our x sub 2, transpose, it will become x equal to -3 for our x sub 2.